Good evening, Facebook friends and YouTube followers. This is Switch again, back here for your third and final video blog of the night for October 1st, 2014, around 7:40 p.m. on a Wednesday night in Billerica. A little bit damp and dreary. We got much beneficial rain, over a half-inch around Billerica, Massachusetts, and that's pretty good. There's not too much news to report, so I'm going to get on to my third and final video blog of the night. It's about The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. I'm going to talk about all the years he was on the air as host of The Tonight Show. The Tonight Show was a talk show that NBC had, and it started in 1954, hosted by Steve Allen. It was a comedy show, variety show, that originally lasted from 11:20 at night to midnight, but then it expanded to 105 minutes, an hour 45 minutes, and a lot of NBC affiliates did not even carry the first 15 minutes of it because they had like local news at 11 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. and it ran 11:15 p.m. to 1 a.m. And Steve Allen hosted it for 3 years. He had a sidekick. Gene Rabin was a sidekick and announcer. Then it was hosted by Jack Parr for 5 years until he decided to quit. And Johnny Carson took over the host of The Tonight Show on October 1st, 1962. He actually was named host of The Tonight Show in April of 1962, but he had a commitment from a game show he was hosting, Do You Trust Who Do You Trust? And he had a commitment until October of 1962, and he honored that commitment to stay on as host, so he couldn't do the Tonight Show until October 1st, 1962. And when he started the Tonight Show on October 1st, 1962, he brought a sidekick from Who Do You Trust? Do You Trust Your Wife? Ed McMahon, and he was his announcer and sidekick, and also the playing for the NBC Orchestra was Skitch Henderson. And the show still had the same time slot, 11:15 p.m. to 1 a.m. But there was a few NBC affiliates that did not carry The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson because they were owned by Group W, Westinghouse, and included WBZ TV4. They had their own late night talk show. I think it was hosted by Regis Philbin, so they were contractually obligated to run that talk show at 11:30. So the old WHDH TV5 in Boston, which was a CBS affiliate, CBS did not have any late night programming, had to pick up The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson at 11:15 p.m. because there was no independent stations. The only other station they had was Channel 2, but that was public broadcasting, and Channel 7 was an ABC affiliate, and they didn't want to put up. The ABC didn't have anything at night, but they were a much weaker station. And The Tonight Show, the format of The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson started with Johnny with a great monologue. Some of these monologues were awesome, politically stuff and current stuff, very, very funny. And also, then he would have sketch comedy. Some of the characters he would have on a sketch comedy is Karnak the Magnificent, which they predicted funny stuff. He would say, this is a sample, 105 in California. What's the age you're going to collect Social Security under the Reagan administration? And then he had Art Fern, famous for his Tea Time movie, which was very good. He would also bring the Maiden Lady, the most famous Maiden Lady for the Art Fern Tea Time movie was Carol Wayne. She was on The Tonight Show as the Tea Time Lady for about 15 years. And also Aunt Blabby and Floyd. And when the Reagan administration happened, Johnny Carson would always impersonate Ronald Reagan. Very funny. And usually he would have a musical guest and a couple of celebrities, and he would have like some headlines and other funny stuff. And The Tonight Show, for the first 10 years, was filmed at NBC Studios in Rockefeller, New York, but from time to time, from like 1969 through 1972, they would go to the NBC Studios in Burbank, California, especially on sweeps month, to have like 2-3 weeks of shows there, usually during sweeps months. And the length of The Tonight Show was reduced from 105 minutes to 90 minutes in January 1967 per Johnny Carson's request, because before he was doing his monologues at 11:15 when the show came on the air. Most NBC affiliates had carried a half-hour news, so they missed the first 15 minutes of the Tonight Show, his monologues. In like 1965, he started his monologues at 11:30, and the first 15 minutes it was hosted by Ed McMahon and Skits Henderson, who was replaced in 1967 as the band leader. Skits Henderson left, and Doc Severinsen took over as the band leader of the NBC Orchestra for the Tonight Show. And also, during this time, for 10 years, beginning in 1965 through 1974, weekends, they show reruns of the Tonight Show on Saturdays and Sunday nights on NBC at 11:30. But many NBC affiliates did not carry the weekend version of the Tonight Show. I know WBZ TV4 did not carry the weekend Tonight Shows at all because they had movies and stuff, and it wasn't picked up on the independent station WSBK or WLVI TV 56. They didn't pick up the weekend version of the Tonight Show. There was no need to, because it was reruns of the Tonight Show. And in 1972, and the Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson permanently moved from New York City to Burbank, California, the NBC studios, and it stayed there the remainder of its run. And the Tonight Show, by the mid-1970s, was the most profitable television show in all of television, raking in between $25 and $35 million a year for NBC. And Johnny Carson got very powerful for it. Every time he renewed a contract, it was written that he would get most Mondays off, and he also had a contract stating that the reruns on the weekends of the Tonight Show be discontinued and have once in a while one of the reruns of the Tonight Show to be shown during the week on certain weeks. He did that, and he would usually have 15 weeks vacation. And with the 15 weeks vacation, a lot of guest hosts hosted the Tonight Show, including Joey Bishop, John Davison, Bob Newhart, David Brenner, Richard Dawson, and several others. And there wasn't too much permanent guest hosts and stuff, and until like later on. And by 1979, Johnny Carson's contract was up, and he made so many demands for NBC, and NBC wasn't going to budge on that. And he threatened to retire or move his talk show to another network, because during the competition, when the Tonight Show getting high ratings and stuff, ABC tried a talk show, Joey Bishop show in the late 60s. It failed. Late 60s, early 70s, CBS tried a late night talk show with Merv Griffin. It failed in the ratings. And Johnny Carson was probably doing this leverage to get a better contract with NBC for the Tonight Show. He did get a great contract. It required the Tonight Show to be reduce from 11:30 p.m. 1 a.m. shave off the last half hour from 11:30 to 12:30 at night. And also, it also gave him ownership of the Tonight Show. That means to control reruns of it if he desires. And also, it meant more and more like reduced work schedules and stuff like that. And he got so much money, tens of millions of dollars each year to host the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and the ratings continue to grow and grow and grow. More guest hosts. They had to make a permanent guest host in 1983 with Joan Rivers as the permanent guest host of the Tonight Show when Johnny was off, and that lasted 3 years until Joan Rivers got her own talk show on the upstart Fox network. And after hearing that, she and Johnny Carson did not talk for the rest of Johnny Carson's life, and that got Johnny Carson mad. And also in 1983, reruns of Carson's comedy classics for clips of The Tonight Show were shown in rerun syndication. It was shown in Boston on WLVI TV 56 around 10:30 or so for about a year or so. Yeah, those reruns popped up on the Family Channel in the mid-90s and the Wheels Channel in the 2000s. Also on Comcast On Demand for a few years and stuff like that. And also, it's on might be on Antenna TV next year. And also, every year when Johnny Carson's anniversary on October 1st, he would show in prime time, the anniversary show in prime time, like highlights of his famous moments of the Tonight Show every year in prime time, like the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, etc., etc. It got real high ratings for NBC, and it continues to get more and more. Some other syndicated people try to beat the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. Like in 1984, there was a late night talk show in the thick of the night hosted by Alan Thicke, but that failed miserably. And in 1986, there was a new guest host when Johnny was off, Gary Shandling. He was hosted a year. Then in 1987, the permanent guest host was Jay Leno. And the Tonight Show continued to get high ratings into the late 80s and early 90s. There were some more networks were trying to get the audience away from Johnny Carson because he was getting in the 60s and stuff. There was a CBS tried a late night talk show with the host of Wheel of Fortune, Pat Sajak, but that only lasted 15 months from January 1989 through April of 1990. And syndication had the Arsenio Hall show, which, actually wasn't getting the ratings, but they had the key demographics, 18 to 34, which most 18 to 34-year-olds didn't watch Johnny Carson's show that much. It was the older generation. And also by the 90s, they didn't know how long Johnny Carson was going to host the Tonight Show because he was getting to retirement age. The ratings were still high and stuff like that. In an affiliates meeting in New York City in May of 1991, Johnny Carson showed up unannounced. He told the NBC station managers that he had a great run, but May of 1992, he was going to retire as host of the Tonight Show. A lot of NBC affiliates were shocked because they thought Johnny Carson would host the Tonight Show forever. And there was, the last year they had so many guests come back and reminisce with Johnny Carson and stuff. And the wheels were set to name Jay Leno the permanent host of the Tonight Show when Johnny retired in 1992. And the last episode of the Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson was May 22nd, 1992. They had no guests. It was the best 30 years of his show, and it was a great show. Like, they showed clips and stuff. They showed a day of what the Tonight Show and stuff like that. Was the most watched Tonight Show ever with over 40 million viewers. The second most was Tiny Tim's Wedding to Miss Vicky in 1969. The first 10 years of The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson, have been destroyed. They were wiped out because NBC had to tape over everyone with the daytime and nighttime shows because videotape was expensive back in the 60s. There's clips here and there owned by the Library of Congress, television and film department, and there was audio of his first show. But from 1972 on, all the episodes of the Johnny Carson Show, Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, were saved. And then when Johnny Carson left, the Tonight Show retired in 1992, NBC bought back the Tonight Show right from Johnny Carson. Best talk show in the history of all of television, the Tonight Show of Johnny Carson. There's never going to be another Tonight Show host like him again. And he was a ratings juggernaut who made a lot of money for NBC. He was money in the bank for them for close to 30 years. Nobody's going to duplicate what he has. Well, I'll be back tomorrow with 3 more video blogs. I'll tell you what they are on Facebook, if you're my Facebook friend, because I'm running out of time. Goodbye, Facebook friends and YouTube followers. See you tomorrow.